Hi, welcome to the Northeast Organic Farming Association of Vermont's Food and Farm Policy Update with Dave Rogers. I'm Greg Stevens, with a certification specialist with Vermont Organic Farmers, and I'm with Dave Rogers, the policy advisor for NOFA Vermont. And what we hope to accomplish here is to have a somewhat regular check-in so that we can talk about issues and decisions that are being made at the state and national level that may impact both producers of agricultural products and consumers of ag products, both in Vermont and nationwide. So, hello, Dave.
Hello. So it's good. It's good to be here, and this is a good idea. I think we need to get these food and farm policy issues out more broadly in the public, and also highlight some of NOFA's involvement in all of these issues.
Yeah, and there's so much going on. It's hard sort of keep track of some of these things. So, why don't we talk about your current role here at NOFA as the policy advisor, and how you got started, and what kind of work you typically do for NOFA?
Yeah. So I grew up on a farm, and I was at the University of Vermont for 28 years and taught agricultural policy, as well as did science-related work. I've always, I'm interested in policy and have been for a long time because it determines, I always used to tell my students, it's really an ethical realm because it decides who gets what and why.
Right.
And when you listen closely to policy arguments about regulations and laws, that's at the subtext there. Who's getting what and why? What do they deserve?
Right.
And of course you have to get your voice and your argument out and fight like heck.
Yeah.
This is a good time to have this first discussion because the Farm Bill just sort of went down in flames in Congress.
That's right.
Just a couple days ago. And we had been working with other organizations for several years on trying to get that Farm Bill licked into shape and get it through Congress. So it was very disappointing. But again, as you listen to the debates, it was about who gets what and why.
Right. Well, in terms of the Farm Bill, that's our topic for today. Given that it's under discussion, it's actually about a year overdue. What is the Farm Bill, and why should people maybe not involved in farming directly be interested in it?
Yeah, some people, even in agriculture, particularly small-scale farmers, local food advocates, sometimes say, the Farm Bill doesn't apply to us. Not true. The Farm Bill touches everybody, every eater, every farmer, every food handler, because it is such a multi-headed beast. It's got so many programs. It's about $950 billion over 5 years. It goes to farmers, goes to food organizations. It's involved with trade, international aid. It's involved with research. It affects the price of food. It affects the way we grow food. It affects the fortunes of everybody connected in the food system. Right. And so the Farm Bill is directly related to, as I say, to basically to everyone. Everyone's got a dog in this fight, and fight they do.
Right. And what's the history of the Farm Bill? Where did the Farm Bill come from? How long has it been around?
Yeah. When I used to teach my agricultural policy course, the whole first part of the course was the history of agricultural policy. How did we come up with these ideas to subsidize farmers or pay them not to plant or provide food aid to other countries, all of this.
Right. And
there's a very long history. Agriculture has been in crisis in this country for hundreds of years because, the major reason is we have incredible natural resources, incredible soil, some of the best soil in the world.
Right.
We have a system of technology and research that has sort of maximized the production from those resources. I don't want to say productivity. Productivity implies some sort of efficiency. Right. We don't always do it efficiently. And there's sort of a culture and ethic in the country of getting out there and making things happen. Right. So you put that together, and you had a series over decades and decades of booms and busts. Good weather, good prices. Everybody plows from fence post to fence post.
Right.
then you have a surplus, that all crashes, the farmers go under, the banks that were financing them start to go under. It had to be stabilized and normalized. So these programs are an attempt to either get farmers to plant less, or
Right.
to expand markets, or to give food away through international channels. And so it's become like Topsy, it's grown by accretion, to include all sorts of programs. And because there's so much money involved, in order to get the funds and programs to support farmers to deal with such crises, you had to bring in everybody in society to buy into that, even people who didn't know a farmer and lived in the inner city. So, over the last 30 years or more, there's been this alliance between nutrition programs, particularly people who need food because they may be food insecure and unable to purchase their own food. So the supplemental nutrition programs and the farmers. So it becomes an urban-rural sort of alliance, not alliance, but sort of like death grip, really. And most of the money in the Farm Bill, 3/4 of it, is to support and to enable lower-income folks to feed their families.
Right. So you're talking about the food stamp.
The food stamp program, yes. Now it's called supplemental nutrition program. But so that has been the balance. The urban lawmakers say, look, we'll vote for these farm programs even though we don't understand them if some of this incredible productive capacity out in agriculture is used to help our folks in the inner cities and in rural areas too.
Right.
So that's the alliance. That's what has broken down over the last few days.
So currently, we are still under the 2008 Farm Bill, which was called the Food Conservation and Energy Act of 2008. Right. And typically the Farm Bill comes up for renewal maybe every 5 years or so. And portions of this Farm Bill were extended through September 30th of 2013 in January when Congress passed the American Taxpayer Relief Act of 2012 to avert the fiscal cliff.
And that was after they failed to pass a Farm Bill last year.
Right. So we're technically still under the 2008 Farm Bill, but what does the 2012 bill, is it safe to call it that? I guess
that's going to be 2013
yeah.
or beyond.
The next version of the Farm Bill, what does that include that maybe is different from the 2008 version, and what is so contentious?
Well, we're living in tough sort of fiscal times, and there is a cost-cutting sort of mentality in Congress, which is good as long as it's done wisely. So these programs, price support programs, paying farmers not to plant, direct subsidies, those programs are being called into question because they cost so much and really are wasteful. So now those programs have been pared back quite a bit, but some sort of an insurance approach to ensuring the security for farmers has been put into place. Also an expensive program. Also, as I said, much of the money in the Farm Bill is related to nutrition programs, supplemental nutrition programs, food stamps, and the Senate, we can get into the Farm Bill process in a minute if you want, but the House just a couple days ago shot down the whole Farm Bill basically over an argument about how much was going to be cut from supplemental nutrition programs. So one thing that so all the programs are being cut across the board. In the House bill, there was about $40 billion cut, half of which was food stamp money, which was just too much for urban and advocates for lower income folks. And they had enough votes to shoot the whole thing down. So I would say that what's in this Farm Bill, some reform in existing farm programs to make them less expensive and to make them more sort of insurance-based rather than direct subsidy-based. But the other programs are pretty much ones that were in the 2008 Farm Bill and are struggling, particularly related to organic and local food programs, struggling to maintain their foothold in the Farm Bill.
So what is in the Farm Bill specifically for organic producers?
In the last couple Farm Bills, we've been able to get some programs, small programs, to support organic research, to help farmers with certification fees, to provide adequate insurance if they have a crop failure so that they're compensated in a way that's commensurate with the value of their crop. Fund the National Organic Program, which basically is the umbrella under which all of organic farms operate. So those are small programs. I mean, organic food sales, something like 4%, I think, of food sales in the country, but organic research is like 0.04. So, you know, we're getting a level, and there are tremendous research questions out there. Organic farmers are trying to develop a new way to farm with fewer chemicals and inputs, and it can be done, but we need to understand more about soils, relationship between plants and pests, incredible scientific challenges and questions that are not being funded properly. And but there are opponents to organic agriculture in Congress, strong opponents, well-entrenched opponents, who view this attempt to bootstrap an alternative food system, if you will. They regard that as something that should be sort of snapped out at an early point before it starts to interfere with their own
Well,
interests.
some people might argue, you know, why should organic agriculture be propped up in this way? Why should there be a reimbursement program for producers to reimburse 75% of their certification fees every year?
Hey, you know, the major, I talked about just a moment ago, the incredible subsidies that we pay for farmers not to plant, and we also provide incredible subsidies, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of subsidies over the years, to pay farmers to clean up what they have sort of done to the environment, to the water systems, to lakes and rivers, to the soils. So there's an incredible amount of money spent to sort of correct the wrongs of conventional agriculture in terms of the environment. Organic agriculture starts out with an ethic of taking care of the environment from the get-go. So it makes sense to try to have people farming in this way. I would argue that every nickel you put into supporting an organic farmer is a nickel you don't have to spend cleaning up the environment on the other end, and I think that's the way we should farm.
And what's in the Farm Bill regarding the dairy sector? Vermont's a big dairy state.
Yeah, I mean, you know, organic dairy works differently from conventional dairy, but dairy is so important. It's you know, it's what Vermont is all about historically and what we're associated with. So dairy prices have been, the dairy price program, the dairy programs in the Farm Bill over the years have been incredibly complicated. Senator Leahy quipped one time that there were only 2 people in Washington who understood dairy policy, and they weren't allowed to talk. And that had to do with price supports and all sorts of other programs, and those became really unwieldy and sort of distorted the market so much that something had to be done, and it was dairy farmers themselves, conventional farmers, who came up with a program that basically cut back on dairy supports if there was too much milk on the market and started to crash the milk prices. Because in recent years, the price of milk has gone like this, and it's just impossible to, as a farmer or any business person, to plan properly when you have prices doing this. But in organic agriculture, organic farmers have a much more stable income because they work directly with organic dairy processors who sign contracts with the farmers to pay guarantee a certain price. Whether or not that pays the bills on the farm is another question, but at least they can plan. And that's a major reason why many farmers in recent years have transitioned to organic dairy production. It simply is a way to be able to farm more dependently and have a more successful business. Plus the market for organic milk is growing.
So where, in terms of the Farm Bill, clearly it's a very complicated piece of legislation. There's an awful lot of things attached, from the food stamps to dairy prices to commodity prices, insurance. How does this whole process work? How do we wind up with a Farm Bill?
Yeah, like with any bill, really. You know, if you think back to 9th grade civics or something, you know. You have 2 houses of Congress, Senate and the House. Each house, each chamber works independently. With the Farm Bill, the Senate comes up with a farm bill. The House comes up with a farm bill.
That's the ag committee. of each-
These are the ag committees, and these are people who sit on the ag committees who are interested in agriculture or these nutrition programs.
Right.
That takes weeks and weeks of testimony and developing ideas, and depending on who's in control in the respective chambers will determine who basically works their will in the committees. So the Senate passed its farm bill back in early June, well, mid-June. It was passed. The Senate Ag Committee passed it. Then it went to the Senate floor. It passed.
Right.
It had some good things in there for organic agriculture, and a major reason is we were very fortunate to have Senator Leahy, who is a ranking member on the Ag Committee and one of the most senior members of in Congress.
Yeah.
And he also fancies himself and refers to himself as the father of the Organic Food Production Act. He created the Organic Food Production Act in the 1990 Farm Bill.
Right.
So he's a great champion, and we're so fortunate to have him. So the Senate had lots of issues. They cut food stamps as well by $4 billion,
Right.
which was controversial in itself. It included the dairy reforms that we've been discussing, and it included some great things related to organic agriculture. The House is controlled by Republicans,
Right.
and the House Agriculture Committee as well.
Right.
With the exception of organic research funds, there's nothing in the House Ag Bill to support organic agriculture. And in fact, there's a fair amount of animosity in the House Ag Committee toward organic agriculture, which we don't have time to talk about.
Right.
But anyway, that bill, controversial among Democrats, among low-income advocates, went to the floor in the House last week. There were hundreds of amendments that were proposed.
Right.
None of the amendments that would have fixed these problems of concern to us and the other groups that I just mentioned were included in and were not able to be voted upon. Several amendments were included that were very controversial and in fact, made it even more difficult for low-income folks to get supplemental nutrition.
Right.
The
There
dairy,
was work. They wanted them to show proof of work, or
yeah, lots of several things. The dairy program reforms that were favored by all got weakened, and that just broke the deal. I mean, it was a very tenuous and fragile, it was very iffy whether it was going to pass to begin with, but as soon as those amendments passed, that was the end of it. So the House will not pass it. The House will not pass a bill.
Yeah. Well,
The
had it passed, let's say,
Yes.
just theoretically, they passed their bill, then we have the Senate version. So how do those two
Yeah,
combine?
so what happens, the way laws are made, these are bills, very different bills. Then there's a conference committee. Some members from each chamber are named to the conference committee, and that's where the horse trading happens. And what comes out has to go back to the respective chambers for a final vote, then it goes to the president for signature. It's in conference committee that you can get your last bite of the apple in terms of getting your programs included in the bill. Senator Leahy would have been on that conference committee had there been a House bill.
Right.
And we were very focused on making sure that he was prepared to go to the mat, as I say, to protect several of our relatively small organic programs that help.
Right.
And he was ready to do that, and we may still get to do this. It's unclear whether the House, I mean, this stuff has to pass. As I said, everybody depends on it. We've got to get a farm bill. There either has to be another extension, which doesn't, it just kicks the can down the road.
Right. Right.
Or there really has to be some concerted effort to resolve these issues, particularly in the House. And it's, at this moment, it's unclear whether they're going to have the political will to do that.
So if we go back to the House version, my understanding is that the Senate version cut, as you said, like $4 billion from the SNAP program, but the House version wanted to cut $20 billion. And my understanding was also that the president was going to veto that version if that provision had stayed.
That's
anyway.
right.
So maybe it doesn't matter that it didn't pass the House.
Well, what he says he'll do and what he does, two different things.
Two different things, right? But in terms of that, and about 67% or more of the spending encompassed in the Farm Bill goes to the food stamps, the SNAP program.
Yeah.
And what when people say, well, wow, that's really way too much money, or how did it get? It seems out of proportion with really protecting farmers or stabilizing prices.
Yeah.
How might you defend
Yeah.
that spending?
Well, in the near term, or in this present environment, we just went through a historic recession.
Right.
And we're still climbing our way out of that hole.
Right.
And Congress, in fact, has done very little. And in fact, a number of its efforts have been counterproductive in terms of creating jobs. I mean, the Federal Reserve has been doing that. It should have been Congress. Right. So we have more unemployed people, no paychecks coming in. As a result of this environment, the food stamp, the amount in food stamps has gone up tremendously because of the recession. So, this is a way to help people. I mean, what kind of society are we?
Well, right.
What's an economy for,
My
right?
understanding is that it went from 1 in 11 Americans back in maybe 2008 were receiving benefits through the SNAP program, and now it's up to 1 in every 7. So clearly, the need has gone up, which I think explains partly the increase in cost for administrating this program. And
yeah, and I would say also we have. America's different. We have a cowboy economy. Basically, let her rip, let new ideas develop, let new industries emerge, let old industries die. Yeah. Creative destruction is the way one famous economist called it. And when you have people in such an environment, they wind up sort of being left out by design, really.
Right.
And so, and we do a very poor job of training in American education, of retraining people, vocational training. The cost of education is prohibitive. So we have people caught in a vice. And with respect to many things, rent, car payments, you name it, and food. And, my view is that, as Bernie would say, my view is that, you have a system that sets people up for makes them vulnerable. So this is one thing we can do. Right. So that's sort of the way I defend that. I would much rather spend money on education and on job training and other programs than food stamps. And I bet people who receive them would much rather have a job than get them too.
Sure. Well, and even, if it goes up to $80 billion a year to administrate and provide the benefits for the SNAP program, which is what they're projecting for, say, 2013, that still is only about 2% of a $3.8 trillion federal budget. So
it's another way to look at it.
And so what do you see coming up? So the House bill, who knows what's going to happen with that? And what happens if we don't pass anything? Does anything happen? Do we keep with the 2008 bill?
When the extension on the Farm Bill that you mentioned earlier, because we went through all this last year.
Well, if we couldn't pass it last
year,
the
House didn't even.
What hope do we have for passing it this year? Or
last year, the House Ag Committee passed the bill, and the leadership wouldn't even bring it to the floor for a vote because they knew they didn't have the votes. Right. Total dysfunction. I mean, this is just another way to see the dysfunction in Congress. So what's going to happen? Well, they passed an extension last year to put a Band-Aid on all this and keep the payments going under the old programs to farmers and food stamps and all these other programs. We've just touched the surface here in this discussion. So they'll pass another extension unless they can get their act together before September 30th, pass a House bill, have a conference committee, get that out, get it approved, and it all signed by September 30th. I would say chances, I would make bets that that's not going to happen. I mean, I just got back from Washington a week and a half ago. I joined a bunch of organic food advocacy organizations, consumer organizations, and others, and we went to Capitol Hill and met with legislators on both sides of the aisle. I met with our representatives, and when I came back, I said it was both reassuring and scary. Right. The reassuring part was, some people get it and understand what's at stake and are well versed, and others are just ideologues. And you can't, the eyes glaze over. You can't get past that.
They're in the bubble.
So we're going to be, this is going to be a forever fight. but you have to show up. You know, one of my favorite sayings is Woody Allen's, which says, you know, the 80% of success is just showing up. You know, we have to be there. Because I'll tell you, the people in the three-piece suits are you know, just out there trolling around in the Congress, and people who are poor, people who are fighting for some alternative vision, small organizations like ours, you know, have difficulty sort of playing that game. But that is the game.
Right, and I'd say we've been pretty successful despite our small size up to this point.
Well, Vermont sends some good people to Congress, so you know, you know, our job is made easier because of that. You know, I work with people from other states, and they have to work very hard and mobilize their citizens and their members to deliver any message.
Well, for people watching at home or watching on their computer. How can people get involved? Let's say someone watching now is there still a role for someone for public involvement to have comment or to have input to sort of shape what will happen to this 2012 or 2013 Farm Bill?
Well, you can join NOFA. We provide information and updates not only on national issues. Today we're talking about the Farm Bill, but in future episodes, we'll talk about all sorts of things, local and regional and state level. So, so that's one way to stay plugged in. Learn about the programs in the Farm Bill and what the stage of discourse is. We were just talking about how it might unfold in the weeks ahead. One great place to go on the web to stay up to date is the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition website. If you Google that, you'll be, and we'll probably be able to flash that website up on the screen. That's probably the best place to go for Farm Bill, you know, updates. The National Organic Coalition, which we belong to, and it was with the National Organic Coalition that I went to Washington. So you can Google that as well. That'll focus particularly on organic programs. And there are a number of others out there that I could mention, but if you just start digging, and you will find the Farm Bill. Once you lock onto that thread, the Farm Bill, you'll find that it connects to everything.
Well, I really appreciate you coming in today, Dave, and talking with us. In the future, we hope to be talking, as Dave said, about issues such as GMO labeling and other issues that affect not only Vermont but the nation. And if you would like to contribute an idea or a topic or a comment, you can send an email to info@NOFAVT.org and put policy update in the subject heading, and we'll get that, and we'll work in your comments and ideas into our show.
And people can email me as well, Dave@NOFAVT.org.
Okay, great. Well, thanks a lot.
Thanks.